Now, an ex-royal staff member has opened up about his time working at Buckingham Palace, claims that out of all of the royals that he catered for, Prince Andrew was difficult.
A storm appears to be brewing behind palace walls as Prince Andrew finds himself at the center of fresh controversy. Reports suggest tensions have reached a breaking point, with longtime staff allegedly walking away, frustration mounting over extraordinary demands, and growing questions about why he continues to resist pressure that has forced others to step aside. As criticism intensifies and public patience wears thin, one issue now dominates the conversation. How much longer can this standoff continue before it reaches an unavoidable turning point? So, what do you think? Should Prince Andrew finally step back completely? Share your view in the comments below. If you enjoy uncovering the latest royal developments, please subscribe. Andrew's fall from royal grace. By April 2026, life inside Marsh Farm had already begun to settle into an uneasy quiet for Andrew. A stark contrast to the world he once knew within palace walls. The 5-bedroom red brick house on the Sandringham estate felt ordinary, almost small, when set against the 30-room royal lodge he had once called home. Months earlier, in early February 2026, he had stepped out of that Windsor residence for the last time, his departure marked by heavy negotiations and a sense of finality that could no longer be delayed. Yet the chain of events that led him there had started long before, in October 2025, when he surrendered his Duke of York title, only to see King Charles soon remove every remaining royal privilege, leaving him, as one report put it, a private citizen with a royal past. But even before that official stripping of status, pressure had already been building inside Royal Lodge. The mansion, tucked within Windsor Great Park, had been his home since 2003, secured under a lease that stretched all the way to 2078. On paper, he had every right to remain, and for a time, he acted like someone determined to do exactly that. Reports spoke of tense discussions as advisors and officials attempted to secure his exit, while he remained largely out of sight, spending long hours inside the property as decisions were made around him. What made the situation more striking were the demands that reportedly followed. Instead of quietly accepting relocation, he is said to have asked for alternative royal residences, including Frogmore Cottage and Adelaide Cottage, homes closely tied to other senior royals. The requests, viewed by some as unrealistic, added another layer of controversy to an already delicate departure. When the final agreement was reached, the move came swiftly. On the 2nd of February 2026, he left Royal Lodge behind, his departure closing a chapter that had lasted more than 2 decades. His first stop in Sandringham was not the comfort of a prepared estate home, but Wood Farm Cottage, a modest and temporary residence described by the press as almost rundown. Only later did he settle into Marsh Farm, where life continued on a quieter, reduced scale. Yet even there, far from Windsor and Buckingham Palace balconies, the contrast between past privilege and present reality remained impossible to ignore, marking a dramatic fall from a life once lived at the very center of royal visibility. Once regularly visible on Buckingham Palace balcony, his reduced circumstances underscored how quickly royal privilege can fade when titles are withdrawn, and institutional support is finally removed and reassigned elsewhere completely over time. A strange tension settled over Sandringham as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor arrived, bringing an atmosphere that unsettled the estate's usual calm. But what led to staff being quietly given permission to refuse serving him? And how did this rare break from royal protocol begin to reshape loyalty, duty, and the very structure of the household? Let's uncover the astonishing details. Andrew visit sparks staff exodus. A curious shift settled over Sandringham as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, Prince Andrew, came to the estate, carrying an atmosphere that would soon unsettle the usual rhythm of royal service. Inside the historic grounds, a rare instruction was quietly passed to household staff, allowing them to refuse assignments connected to him if they felt uneasy. In a system built on duty and hierarchy, this level of choice was unusual, and it quickly reshaped the working atmosphere in ways few had anticipated. Reports from Sandringham suggested that within days, many workers opted out of roles linked to his household, leaving visible gaps in daily operations. Some insiders described the mood as strained, with discomfort spreading quietly through sections of the estate workforce. By contrast, earlier reports circulating in the media spoke of expectations for extensive support, including a large residence and a full domestic team of cooks, gardeners, drivers, butlers, and security staff. These accounts, often described as contested, highlighted a growing tension between reduced willingness among staff and the scale of support reportedly requested. Over time, what was expected to be a structured household environment instead appeared to function on minimal staffing, increasing pressure on those who remained. This unusual flexibility reportedly led to operational strain, as essential roles became harder to fill across the estate. In many accounts, the allowance for staff to opt out was described as highly unusual within royal service, where refusal is rarely part of standard procedure. This led to operational strain as essential roles became harder to fill across the estate. Amid these challenges, some commentary linked the reluctance to broader reputational concerns that had long circulated in public discussion. What emerged from Sandringham, according to overlapping reports from outlets such as People magazine and Marie Claire, was a portrait of a traditional institution adjusting under unusual pressure. The situation, set against the backdrop of late 2025, continued to draw attention as questions lingered about staffing choices and personal expectations. Ultimately, Sandringham became the focus of a broader conversation about how reputation and perception can quietly reshape even the most rigid systems. Within this environment, ordinary routines that once ran with ease reportedly became complicated as staff numbers fluctuated and responsibilities were redistributed among a smaller team. Observers noted that such moments reveal how quickly stability inside even the most established royal settings can be influenced by perception, hesitation, and institutional caution. While official details remain limited, the overlapping narratives continue to shape public understanding of what unfolded behind the scenes at Sandringham. Across the estate, the story is remembered less as a single event and more as a series of quiet decisions, small refusals, and shifting expectations that together created an unusual chapter in modern royal administration and left lasting questions about service, duty, and perception itself. What really led to the breaking point at Sandringham, and was it truly just one dispute, or the result of years of hidden tensions slowly building beneath royal formality? How did Prince Andrew's protected position within the monarchy begin to unravel? And what long-circulating palace whispers finally forced everything into question? Let's find out. Andrew's troubled royal household legacy. You need to understand something important. What reportedly unfolded at Sandringham was never really about one difficult period or one sudden dispute. By the time the situation reached that point, the foundations had already been weakening for years, hidden beneath the formality and discipline that define royal life. For a long time, Prince Andrew occupied a unique position within the monarchy. The title, the status, and the institution around him often softened problems that might have been far harder to ignore elsewhere. Yet behind palace doors, stories had been circulating for decades. Former employees, household insiders, and royal observers repeatedly described a working environment that many found challenging. The details varied, but the overall picture rarely changed. According to accounts gathered over the years by royal biographer Andrew Loney, staff often spoke of demanding expectations and an atmosphere where mistakes felt costly. Several individuals reportedly recalled feeling constantly under pressure, uncertain whether even small issues might trigger frustration. What made these stories remarkable was not a single allegation, but the consistency of the descriptions. Different voices, different years, yet strikingly similar experiences. Within royal households, discretion is almost sacred, complaints rarely become public, and private tensions are usually buried beneath tradition. That is why the persistence of these reports carried weight. Long before headlines linked Andrew to larger controversies, a reputation had already formed behind the scenes. Then everything changed. When Andrew stepped away from public duties in November 2019, following intense scrutiny over his association with Jeffrey Epstein, the crisis moved into a completely different phase. What had once been viewed as a temporary retreat gradually became a lasting reality. The financial settlement reached in 2022, while accompanied by continued denials of wrongdoing, did little to halt the damage. Public confidence had already been shaken, and the institution faced growing pressure to create distance. As the years passed, Andrew's place within royal life became increasingly uncertain. By late 2025, remaining honors and privileges had reportedly disappeared, confirming what many had already sensed. The monarchy was looking toward the future, while Andrew seemed trapped by the consequences of the past. That shift changed everything for the people around him. For years, frustrations may have been tolerated because serving Andrew was still connected to serving the crown. There was a sense of duty attached to the role, but once that connection weakened, the calculation became very different. Staff were no longer supporting a working royal, carrying out responsibilities on behalf of the monarchy. They were simply supporting Andrew, and that distinction proved crucial. Patience became harder to sustain. Loyalty became more fragile. The authority that once came naturally from royal status no longer carried the same force. In the end, Andrew reportedly found himself confronting a difficult truth. Titles can command attention, but respect cannot be inherited. Once support begins to fade, influence can disappear far more quickly than anyone expects. For all the headlines about Prince Andrew's finances and residence, was the real struggle never about money at all, but identity? What truly drove his growing isolation as King Charles reshaped the monarchy? And how did quiet disagreements behind palace walls escalate into a deeper rift that may have permanently altered Andrew's place in the royal family? Let's unravel the details. Andrew's identity and royal struggles. For all the debate surrounding Prince Andrew's finances, his home, and his future, the most revealing battle may never have been about money at all. It was about something far more personal, the struggle to hold on to an identity that had shaped his entire life. As the monarchy continued to evolve under King Charles, Andrew reportedly found himself increasingly isolated from the institution that had once defined him. Behind palace walls, disagreements between the brothers were said to have grown sharper, with tensions rising over what Andrew's future should look like in a royal family determined to move forward. Those close to the situation suggested that Andrew believed he had already made significant concessions. In his view, certain expectations had been met, and he felt entitled to certainty in return. What he reportedly wanted was not simply a roof over his head, but lasting guarantees. He sought reassurance that his living arrangements would remain secure, and that financial support would not suddenly disappear at some point in the future. One concern appeared to trouble him more than any other. Looking ahead to the day when Prince William eventually becomes king, Andrew reportedly feared that the next generation of leadership might show even less willingness to accommodate him than King Charles. To him, the future seemed uncertain, and he wanted protection from changes he could no longer influence. These concerns inevitably raised questions. As public discussion intensified, attention turned toward how a royal figure who no longer carried official duties continued to maintain an expensive lifestyle. Voices within political circles quietly began asking where financial support originated and how long such arrangements could reasonably continue. The questions grew louder as scrutiny increased. Yet while observers focused on property and finances, another detail captured attention. Reports claimed that inside his residence, Andrew continued to insist on the use of His Royal Highness, despite losing the privilege of using the title publicly. Staff were reportedly expected to observe long-standing traditions of respect and formality, reflecting a world that seemed increasingly distant from modern reality. To many people, the image appeared puzzling. The monarchy had changed. Public opinion had changed. Even the institution that once shielded him was concentrating on its future rather than revisiting its past. Yet, Andrew reportedly remained attached to customs and symbols that had defined him for decades. Perhaps that attachment reveals the heart of the story. For someone born into extraordinary privilege, titles were never merely ceremonial words. They represented status, purpose, and a lifelong understanding of who he was. Losing them meant more than a change in protocol. It meant confronting a new reality. And so, as the royal family looked toward the future, Andrew appeared to be fighting a very different battle. Not simply for financial security or a place to live, but for the last remaining pieces of a world he believed could never truly be taken away. Prince Andrew once lived within a world where every detail was managed before it could become a problem, supported by a vast network of aides and staff ensuring comfort and control at every turn. But what caused this carefully maintained system to begin unraveling by early 2026? And how did a life built on certainty suddenly shift into something unrecognizable before his eyes? Let's uncover the intriguing details. The end of royal ease. For much of his life, Prince Andrew existed within a world where obstacles rarely reached him. Behind every engagement, every journey, and every daily responsibility stood an army of aides, assistants, and household staff whose job was to ensure that royal life moved effortlessly. Problems were solved before they appeared, schedules were managed with precision, and support was never in short supply. It was a system built over decades, one that seemed as permanent as the monarchy itself. Yet by the time early 2026 arrived, that familiar world appeared almost unrecognizable. The most revealing sign of this transformation was not found in a public announcement or an official royal statement. Instead, it emerged quietly from reports surrounding life at Sandringham. Staff members were allegedly informed that serving Andrew would not be compulsory if they felt uneasy doing so. While the decision may have sounded administrative on the surface, its symbolic significance was impossible to ignore. For generations, royal households operated according to traditions rooted in duty and discretion. Assignments were accepted without debate, and personal preference rarely entered the equation. The idea that employees could decline to work for a senior royal would once have seemed extraordinary, yet reports suggested that many chose exactly that option, highlighting just how dramatically attitudes around Andrew had changed. The consequences extended far beyond staffing arrangements. At Wood Farm, the level of assistance reportedly available to him was said to be considerably smaller than the support network he had relied upon for years. Tasks once handled automatically by others increasingly became his own responsibility. The adjustment may sound simple, but for someone raised within one of the most carefully protected institutions in the world, it represented a profound shift in daily life. What made the situation particularly striking was that many of the individuals distancing themselves were experienced members of the royal household, people who had spent years navigating the traditions and expectations of palace service. Their reluctance suggested that the challenges facing Andrew were no longer temporary setbacks, but part of a much larger reality. As public duties vanished and institutional backing appeared to narrow, reports increasingly described a man struggling to adapt to a new position within royal life. The influence, authority, and automatic deference that once surrounded him seemed to be fading, replaced by frustration and growing isolation. For observers watching from the outside, it was not simply the story of lost privileges. It was the story of a royal figure confronting a world that no longer operated according to the rules he had always known. Andrew sees himself as a man wrongly judged, but the world outside the palace tells a very different story of growing distance and fading trust. So what truly led King Charles to draw a firm line, and how did private tensions turn into a decisive move that reshaped Andrew's place within the monarchy? Let's reveal the compelling details behind it all. Prince Andrew faces royal isolation. Few figures within the modern royal story have found themselves as isolated as Andrew appears to be in recent years. He continues to see himself as a man wrongly judged, someone who believes his ties and associations were never what critics claim they were. Yet outside the palace walls, a very different picture has formed, one where patience has thinned and distance from the center of royal life grows wider. King Charles has made a clear choice to protect the future of the crown by separating it from ongoing controversy. This approach became more visible in June 2026, when Andrew was not allowed to attend Garter Day at Windsor Castle, a ceremony he had once taken part in as a familiar presence. Earlier, he had already missed trooping the color, an absence that signaled a shifting place within the family. Even private allowances that once softened such exclusions now appear to have ended. For Andrew, these moments have added up into a pattern of being present in memory, but absent in reality. One royal insider described the mood as deeply painful for him as he watches celebrations unfold without his participation. Time and again, he finds himself positioned at the edge of events that once defined his life. Public reaction has also grown more critical, with questions directed toward the monarchy following the king even during public appearances. In one such moment, a protester openly challenged King Charles about whether Andrew should face legal consequences. The incident highlighted how closely the issue follows the royal household wherever it appears. The impact has reached further into the next generation as Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie face uncertain roles within a changing royal structure. Expectations of expanded duties under a future reign now seem far less likely. What remains clear is a steady movement away from restoration and towards separation, as the institution reshapes itself for stability over sentiment. Andrew remains convinced that history will judge him differently from the way he is currently viewed by the public. But the direction of events suggests otherwise, as distance replaces familiarity and the monarchy continues moving forward without pause for reconciliation. Each decision reinforces a growing divide that now defines his place within the royal story. Yet the silence around his future speaks louder than any statement ever could, marking an ending chapter in royal separation that feels irreversible. Across the gilded walls of royal life, two princesses move under constant scrutiny, their every gesture shaped by a legacy they did not choose. But what lies behind this growing unease? And how did a father's controversial past become the shadow that refuses to leave their public lives? As spring unfolded, something unexpected began to intensify the pressure even further. Let's find out. Princesses shadowed by royal turmoil. Across the gilded world of the royal household, a quiet unease continues to follow two princesses who seem unable to fully escape the weight of their family name. Every public appearance is measured, every gesture observed, as though history itself leans in too close. Behind their composed presence lies a deeper strain, shaped by the reputation of a father whose past has become an unshakable backdrop to their lives. Even the simplest moments in public feel framed by questions they did not create, yet cannot avoid. That uneasy atmosphere deepened further as unexpected events unfolded in the spring. In the middle of May, while walking his dogs across the vast grounds of the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, Andrew was reportedly confronted by a man wearing a ski mask. The incident, later confirmed by local authorities, led to the arrest of a 39-year-old man from Suffolk who was charged with several public order offenses and denied the allegations. Though the matter was quickly contained, it added a new layer of tension around a figure already surrounded by scrutiny. Not long after, in early June, another image drew attention. Andrew was photographed driving near his residence with a striking purple bruise spreading from his temple across his eye and down his cheek. The explanation offered was brief and clinical, described as a non-serious medical issue, while a source close to him insisted there was nothing unusual or alarming behind it. Still, in the absence of clarity, and with his public appearances becoming increasingly rare, speculation filled the silence far faster than official words could. All of this unfolds against a far heavier backdrop that has never fully loosened its grip. The long-running controversy tied to Jeffrey Epstein continues to cast a deep and persistent shadow, especially as new discussions and investigations resurfaced in early 2026 following renewed attention to released documents. His name remains linked to ongoing inquiries, including reports of a police review into an alleged historical incident. Some observers have even noted that, stripped of formal royal protection, his position may now be more exposed to legal and public scrutiny than at any previous point. In the end, what surrounds this family is not a single moment of crisis, but a slow accumulation of unanswered questions, each one echoing into the next, leaving little space for silence that does not feel filled with meaning. Once defined by ceremony and privilege, Andrew now faces a life reshaped by restriction and public scrutiny, despite repeated denials, and a settled civil case with no admission of liability. What really pushed King Charles III to take such firm steps, and how did lingering doubts transform Andrew's royal standing so dramatically? Let's find out. Andrew's fall from royal grace. Once surrounded by ceremony and certainty, Andrew now moves through a quieter existence where public judgment feels closer than any formal procession he once knew. The visible privileges that once defined his role have thinned into restrictions that shape daily life, as decisions made within the monarchy continue to reshape how he is seen and supported. Despite repeated and consistent denials of every allegation and a civil case that ended in settlement without any admission of liability, uncertainty has lingered in the background of his name. This lingering shadow is often described as a factor that influenced King Charles to take firm steps that have altered his brother's public position. In early 2026, what remains is a life noticeably reduced in scope, defined less by ceremony and more by consequence, as institutional distance becomes increasingly visible. After his relocation away from Royal Lodge, attention shifted toward a quieter residence in Norfolk, a 5-bedroom farmhouse that contrasts sharply with the grandeur once associated with his life. Within the grounds of Sandringham, the environment is described as calm, yet distant, where staff movement has become more cautious and reluctance is quietly noted. Reports suggest that maintaining household staff has become increasingly difficult, reflecting not only logistical strain, but also the wider effects of reputation and institutional withdrawal. These changes raise broader questions about how the modern monarchy balances protection of its members with the need to preserve public trust. The situation challenges long-held traditions of containment, where past scandals were absorbed quietly to maintain unity at all costs, even as 21st-century expectations have shifted sharply. In contrast, the current approach appears more willing to allow visible distance when necessary, even when it involves members of the royal family. Amid this shift, Andrew's position has become increasingly isolated, with former structures of support appearing to recede over time. Yet within his private outlook, he maintains a firm belief that his situation is temporary and that restoration remains possible despite current realities. This internal conviction stands in contrast to the visible distance maintained by official circles and long-standing acquaintances. In the summer of 2025, moments of transition became more apparent as changes in residence and routine signaled a new phase of royal separation. Even so, the expectation of a full return to public life has steadily diminished as time and sentiment continue to move in a different direction. In the end, what defines the moment is not only the question of reputation or denial, but the visible retreat of institutional support that once surrounded him, leaving a life shaped by consequence, distance, and unanswered expectation as early 2026 unfolds, with history continuing forward without pause while he holds to the belief that reversal still exists somewhere ahead, even as time moves steadily beyond any expectation of return itself now. So what do you think is happening in ex-Prince Andrew's meltdown? Servants walking out and outrageous demands, yet he refuses to bow. We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe.